There will be many that will want to see this later. So, good evening, Rotarians and all colleagues in peace. I am Jim Halderman, chair of the District 5450 Peace Committee, and they are the sponsor of the Forum for Discussion. Tonight's program brings me much to be excited about. When I realized there was an organization campaigning for a Department of Peace at the cabinet level in the United States government, I knew I wanted to be a part. Yet that's only a small fragment of what this exceptional organization does. In studying their educational program, I saw a tremendous fit with many of Rotary's goals and the 8 pillars of the Institute for Economics and Peace. And Rotary signed that MOU with the Institute in 2017. So we are very, very honored tonight to have Terry Mason, who's the chair of the Peace Alliance Educational Institute, and Liz Gannon-Graydon, chair of the Peace Alliance. Terry, Liz, the platform is yours.
Oh, thank you, Jim. It's lovely to be here this evening. This is Terry. I'm delighted to be here. And Liz, you're going to kick us off, I think, right?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. How are you? I'm really excited to be here tonight. And just so you have a sense of what's coming on, Terry and I are going to do a brief introduction into the story we're trying to tell tonight. And we're going to leave most of the session open to very interactive conversation. So what I want to start with, I am at nature a storyteller. And I had 2 teachers of peace building that taught me that the fastest way to change the world is to change the stories that we tell. And so the story that we're going to work on tonight is exactly what you talked about, right? That peace is possible. And in order to get to that idea that peace is possible, we have to let people know how it is practical and profitable, right? We talk about this a lot of times. So we're going to start to talk about the possible. And then I'm going to weave a little story about the possible, and then we're going to go into the very practical and profitable. I'm going to start with my personal story because I think what I'd like you to all think about, you're all here for this topic, so obviously peace is important to you. And I want you to think a little bit about what in your biography, what are the parts of your life story that brought you to do this particular work? And I can briefly outline it for me. I'm the daughter of a college professor and a civil rights activist in the 1960s. My very first memory of the world was the assassination of Dr. King, because it was the first time I watched my father cry watching television. And when I asked him why someone would want to kill someone like Dr. King, because I knew who he was, he said, there are some things that we will never understand. But the work he left incomplete was the creation of what he called the beloved community. And he said to 4-year-old Liz, you're here to create beloved community. So when I was 4, I got this big mission in life. And my mother was an emergency room nurse in New York City. So my father gave me the peace is possible, right? At 4, he told me peace is possible. And there are these visions for how to do it. My mother was very practical. She was an emergency room nurse. And the emergency room nurse is about triage, what's in front of you, what needs doing right now. And so I really have spent my life in the balance between those visions, right? What is the larger vision? How do we create that vision for peace? But what are the practical steps we need to take to make sure that peaceful conditions happen? And the last thing that really informs a lot of the work, I was a middle school teacher for 17 years. And 30 years ago, as a young teacher, every year I would say to my students, you guys are the future and it is up to you to make the world a better place. And in 1992, a young woman raised her hand and said, Mrs. Graydon, adults always say that, but what would better look like? And I said, what do you mean? She said, this is how the world is. You want me to make it better? What would that look like? And it was not long after that, this was this journey. So I've spent the last 30 years of my life dedicated to answering that question. And for me, it goes right back to Dr. King's vision of a world where nonviolence is possible. So when I started to think And when Jim asked us to weave together the story of what you guys are doing in Rotary, I was really excited because I had never done a deep dive into your website, to be very honest. I knew who you are. And I focused mostly on your peace section. And I was so excited to see everything and how aligned it was with what we're already doing. And I loved the question on your site, right, where it said, what if peace is possible, right? So we're going to start with that question. What if peace is possible? Where are we going to take that? And what we want to do mostly, I'm going to turn over to Terry and she's going to show you some of the connections we made. But what we want to do mostly tonight is work together to co-create the story of a world where peace is possible, practical, and profitable. And when I was thinking about a story for how we can collaborate together, I was thinking about different groups and group origin stories. My sons and husband are filmmakers, and I think about all the great films that have collaborative teams. And I think about the Justice League, and I think about those of you who know DC Comics, right? Or the Avengers. But there's another team that came up in my mind that I want to kind of propose for us to think about. And there's a series of films that, as someone who spends my life in peace building, I am irrationally attached to. And that is the Mission Impossible movies. Is there anyone who is not at all familiar with Mission Impossible, whether from the old series or... Well, and I can catch you up. I can give you enough context even if you don't know them. But I was binge watching them this summer in anticipation of the newest one. And there was a line from the second one and a line from the fifth one that gave me the vision that I want to open up the conversation with tonight. In the second movie, Tom Cruise's character is asked to recruit someone who isn't an agent, and he doesn't really understand why until he realized there's this kind of morally repugnant reason why they want to recruit this woman for the team. And he said, I don't think I can get her to do it. And his boss said, do you think it will be difficult? And he said, very difficult. And he said, good, well, this is Mission Impossible, so difficult should be easy for you. So I really liked that idea, right? That there are difficult things out there, but we have to start with the idea that it is possible. And in the fifth movie, there's a villain or the antagonist who is trying to move people into place where he can get them all where he needs to be for the climax of what he wants to accomplish. And he says a line that has stuck with me ever since I first saw it. He said, my greatest weapon is human nature. And I thought about it and I said, oh my goodness, my greatest tool or instrument is human nature. I just believe something very different about human nature than that person did, right? So for me, I want to start with that idea that it is possible. And I want to give you one example of two young women I got to meet years ago. I was at a Women in the World conference here in New York City. And it's a conference that brings together women from violent hotspots around the globe. It's held at Lincoln Center. It's this beautiful forum where they get to tell their stories. And every year Toyota presents something called the Mothers of Invention. And they give grants to people who had an innovative idea for solving a very practical problem associated with violence. And there were two young women, and they were at Columbia Grad School in architecture, planning, and preservation. And it was in 2010 at the time of the Haiti earthquake. And they're in school, but their hearts were very much touched by something they read about the fact that when bad things tend to happen in conflict zones, whether they're man-made or natural disasters, it happens when the lights go down, when the sun goes down in darkness. That's when violence happens. That's when the scary things happen. So they have a company called Luminade, and they invented these little blow-up pillows that have LED lights that can charge solar. And on that charge, they can give you 10 hours of light. And when they slept with pillows that were lit up, it reduced the violence in the camps. And I thought that to me was so inspiring because I thought there was a cause of potential violence. There was a very practical problem. And these young women, given their skill set, were poised to do something about it. And I thought what we want to do for the rest of the conversation, Terry's going to give a brief introduction, but what we want to do is kind of get a sense of everyone on this call. What is the place in which you feel poised, right? What about you leaves you to act in a way that everyone else might not? And the Mission Possible team goes, what's the mission? I need someone who can fly a helicopter. I need someone who knows this language. I need someone who knows how to crack a safe, whatever it is. But I'm looking at the faces and I know that everyone on this call has a really powerful skill set, story, and connection that can help us weave together the story. And what I would like us to do, and Jim, I like that you said maybe we'll do this again, is make this a continuing, ongoing question, because I think what we need to do in this moment, the resources are there. I loved looking at your website. I really loved looking at the IEP website. And we have a lot of sources. Terry and I can talk if you have specific questions. But I think what we need at this moment is a tipping point of people who are working together to tell the story that is possible. If we get enough people to understand how possible it is, we'll figure out the practical and the profitable. And so I just wanted to go over with you quickly what Jim said. Our mission is to educate, advocate, and mobilize for a culture of peace. And we have identified 5 cornerstones in which we act. There are community peace building at the local level, humanizing justice systems, cultivating personal peace, international peace, and, oh, Terry, what am I missing? Humanizing justice system, personal peace, teaching peace in schools as the educator. Yeah. And so one of the things we invite you as you think about the contribution you would like to make on the call, those are the spheres we identified. And we looked at, you guys have your 7 areas of concentration. Is there a particular area within peace building that you feel drawn to or expert or have something particular to offer? And what's the scale at which you want to work? So think about sphere and scale. For me, the spheres that I feel most comfortable in are community peace building, education for peace, and humanizing justice systems. And I do scale very much from working here in New York with a couple of organizations that work with people reentering from incarceration. And at this point in my life, I'm working at a very local level. How can I transform the community right around me? And the thing that you mentioned, Jim, is our biggest advocacy policy that we advocate for is the Department of Peace Building, because there are so many tools out there that we all know what they are and we've seen them and they're on all our websites. But it's not built into the structures and the infrastructures of our government. And so there are a couple of our friends on here from the Department of Peace Building, and if you had questions, they could talk more about that, who we need to get in place infrastructures that are going to enable and foster the building of peaceful communities. So Terry, if you want to share, and then if anyone has questions before we move to the more interactive part.
Sure. I'm going to share a document that we put together, and this pulls together the 8 pillars of peace, of the vision of humanity, and the Rotary's 7 areas of focus, and the 5 cornerstones of peace building from the Peace Alliance. And we started drawing the little connecting lines, and there are more. This could be covered with lines, but at least we found at least one connection for every single thing. So it was just amazing because there's so much similarity in everything that we're seeing here. But I would like to touch on the 5 cornerstones a little bit, since that's new for this group. I'm not going to tell stories for each one. There are multiple stories for each one, but what brought me into the Peace Alliance, I went to a 1.5 day seminar with my husband, with Marianne Williamson. She's one of the founders of the Peace Alliance. And she started her whole arc with us, starting with personal peace building and how we can develop peace for ourselves. And then she moved into your local family and community, your immediate family and community of friends, and then into the broader community. And at the very end of the 1.5 days, she talked about the advocacy and the bill for the Department of Peace at that time, which was Dennis Kucinich's bill, which is now the Department of Peace Building, has been introduced in every session of Congress since the early 2000s. So she started with that personal peace building side, and that cultivating personal peace, I'm fairly confident, is something that everyone on this call is somewhat comfortable with and familiar with, whether it's meditation or prayer or walking or anything that you do to center yourself and be in a place of peace. Fostering international peace, I mean, there are wonderful organizations that do tremendous work. Come to mind, Search for Common Ground. They go into areas of conflict and they negotiate peace with people in small areas to recognize what's happening in their area and help them solve their issues and their conflicts. Practicing peace in schools. There's so many stories of this. Challenge Day is a wonderful organization that does terrific work. The Ohio dispute resolution. This was a piece of legislation that was passed in Ohio where they teach peer mediation to grade school kids. So you have grade school kids that are out on the playground, and if something starts to happen between two kids, another one will jump right in and mediate the problem before anybody starts to get to fisticuffs. And then those kids, they're fast learners. They go home and they see somebody in their family having a conflict and they know how to mediate it. So they're doing tremendous work there. Community peace building. There's an organization in Gainesville, Florida called River Phoenix Center for Peace Building. They do amazing work. They've started a program of youth police dialogues, which they have taken around the globe to teach facilitators how to facilitate conversations between the community members and the police, to bring them together so they're not in adversarial positions. That's just one. I mean, there's so, as I say, there's so many. Go to our website. There's a whole list of organizations and work that's being done. But in humanizing justice systems, I am going to tell 2 short stories. One has to do with restorative justice. And you may or may not have heard of restorative justice. And Lauren Abramson started an organization in Baltimore called Community Conferencing. And she says her definition is traditional justice asks the question, who is at fault and how can we punish them? Restorative justice asks different questions. It asks the question, what has been the harm and how can it be repaired? And they have marvelous stories on their website. One of them is about a woman whose car was stolen. And there was a couple of youths that were caught, and the police department referred them to community conferencing. And Lauren Abramson, it's funny too. Lauren Abramson says, we do something radical. We have people talk to each other. Because in the traditional justice system, as you know, the defendant and the plaintiff are not allowed to speak. Their attorneys talk, but they have people talk to each other. So they got together, and the woman whose car was stolen got to address the 2 young men who stole her car and explain why that was a problem for her. She couldn't get to work. She lost income. She was inconvenienced. She couldn't take her children places, and all these things. And they were able to understand why that act had a greater impact than just giving them an opportunity to have a joyride for a few hours. So, and I don't know what they worked out in terms of a contract to repair the harm, but that's what they do. Another story, this is one that's very important to me. This was brought to my attention probably over a decade ago. There's a man named Ari Cowan, and he had done a lot of work on resolving conflict and minimizing conflict. And he had come up with a program that he really wanted to try in a prison to reduce violence. And he went to the lead of the prison at Clallam Bay Correctional Facility, the warden there. And Clallam Bay is Eastern Washington, and they have about I think it was 900 inmates from 3 different states, and these are high risk, high violent criminals. Many of them are very violent criminals. And he wanted to go in and do this program to reduce their violent behavior. And he talked to the warden about it, and the warden was on board. He said, okay, I'll let you do it to 1/3 of my prison population for 1 week. And Ari was like, wow, only 1 week. We'll see. I don't know if it'll work. I mean, so he went into the prison, he trained all the prison staff, and he brought all the 300 inmates together, and he rolled out the program and what was going to happen and how it would work. And he said the main thrust of the message was, you are not violent by nature, which for these people was shocking, because everything they had experienced in their lives, their adult lives leading up to where they were, the world was telling them, society was telling them that they were violent by nature, and that's why they were where they were. So that was the main focus. You are not violent by nature. And I'm not sure the details of the program, but they executed the program. They went through it for a week. Ari sat at home waiting to hear what had happened. And he figured out, he learned from the warden that they had violent outbreaks such that paramedics were called. I think it was 200 times a month. Paramedics were called because of violence between inmates. And so he figured if he could get that number down a little bit, then that would prove his program was successful. So only given a week, he was hoping for 3%. That would mean success. 3% of that 200 calls, paramedic calls. So after a week, he hadn't heard back from the warden yet. And he was waiting, and he waited a few days, and he still hadn't heard back. So he called him up and said, so what happened? I'm just, I'm curious here. Tell me what happened. And the warden said, well, it was very successful, so successful that we decided to expand it to the full prison population. So we're letting it go for another week or so. So I was, well, that's great. Did I get my 3%? He said, I'll tell you later. So they went for another week, and then another week. And he called the warden and said, you got to tell me what's going on. I mean, I'm in the dark over here. And he said, I just want to know what's happening. Did I get my 3% success? And the warden said, are you sitting down? He said, the first week was so successful, we expanded it to the full prison population. We've done it for another 2 weeks. He said, did I get my 3%? 100%. Not one paramedic call for any of the people that were impacted by the program. Not only is that a miracle, 95% of these inmates will be released back to society. So for them to learn behavior and actually learn it and adopt behavior that reduces their own violent actions benefits all of us. So the bottom line is there are amazing programs that are being done every day in our world, in our society, in our country, in our communities. And the 5 cornerstones capture the different areas. Liz mentioned the Department of Peacebuilding legislation, and I did too. The Department of Peacebuilding legislation really is the umbrella over all of it. And that's why we support it so strongly. So as Liz said, you've had a little time to think now. Which of all these areas, the 5 cornerstones, the 8 pillars, the 7 areas of focus, which things, where are you drawn? We'd love to hear from people, to come off mute and to share what you'd like to do or be in the world, or what attracts you, even if you don't know what you want to do. What seems to resonate with you that feels like, ooh, that's my place to be. That's my jam. Anyone want to be brave?
Terry, I don't know if we can leave that down so I can see. I only see like a couple people. So can we, or did you want to keep the
I'll
share
go.
up? Okay.
Okay, I'm Bryn Martin. I'm in Kentucky, and I'm very passionate about advocacy. I have advocated for quality education for decades and for various things in the community and legislation. So it does excite me to the idea of integrating peace building with some of that. And I had done started some groups with kids doing advocacy a while back, and I was a youth ministry director for our church for some years. And so I really would love to be able to take some peace strategies and help to work that in, and get kids excited about ways that they can mediate and solve some of their own problems, and even venture into solving some of the bigger problems in the communities. And how to do it. I think some of the kids have probably shed some light with some of the adults, especially as we in this partisan climate of not really being able to agree to disagree on a number of important issues. So
Yeah.
I really think that if we can teach the kids out of the mouths of babes, they will be the ones to really help lead us into a more peaceful future. So I think it's very important that we involve them and teach them young so
Mm.
that they can it'll be natural for
Yeah.
them. So that is so important. I'm excited about the prospect of being a part of that and watching what they do for us
Yeah.
and with us. So
And
I
we have
s-
a question from JD.
yeah. I was gonna say, yeah.
Um, Hi. I don't know if my
Hi.
camera is on. Yeah, I'm on the phone here. And Bren, that was beautiful. I work primarily in environmental conservation. I'm from North Central Colorado, part of the Rotary up here. And one of my rules for my office is to leave national politics at the door, because I believe that nobody wants to destroy the planet. We just might not understand what we're doing on a day to day. So if we can all come together and say, okay, we all want to conserve this swath of land, whether it's for ranching or anything else, I find that really creates a really beautiful table, and I've seen amazing connections being made out of that. And to Bren's point, children, they don't know, frankly, they don't know any better, right? They don't know the bad parts. And so when I teach them how to grow vegetables or how to hike on the land, it doesn't matter really where they're coming from, but they are able to share in the love of the land together. And so looking at these charts on the screen, that is something that really resonates with me in terms of peace building and finding that justice, the restorative justice of the land and of our community.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, JD, because in Colorado, we have a strong advocate on our representative, Pete Lee. He has presented and passed a lot of restorative justice legislation in Colorado. It's a model for us all.
Andy, sweet. I see you.
Yeah.
I can't see all of them. So if someone sees
Yeah.
someone's hand that I don't see.
Yeah, and I'd like to say if to so that we can see the hand, and Terry, you may want to take the screen down so we can see a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you. And at the bottom of your screen, in reactions, you have your hand to raise your hand to get the attention. And Andy has his hand up.
Yeah, I do. Rotary Club of Grand Junction, D5470 Peace Chair. And listening to you guys and good start, on like trying to get to the children and the start with them. I've had ideas on that and I guess speaking of which of being a child, and part of my story is that I got interested early on. I was 13, and I don't know my whole story, and I'd like to work on that too. But maybe the age of 13 is that I started recognizing that there was that corruption exists. And so as far as the 8 pillars peace that I identify with low levels of corruption. But then looking at your five, sorry, the Peace Alliance, the five
Cornerstones.
cornerstones, thank you, is that I look at the community, right? So like staying local. I care about my community. As a child, I was a mediator. I was trained in my elementary school at fourth, fifth grade. I was a tutor as well. And so I really relate to conflict resolution. And like hearing that idea about restorative justice, like I'm really interested in doing that. And then I've brought in ideas for our in our peace committee of trying to bring in peace bells to get installed at parks. We could get peace benches installed at every school, or that is a bench that the child could be sat on for bad news to be delivered to, or opportunity to solve a conflict between two or more, right? So in the grander scheme of things, I would like to leave behind like a legacy of like a peace institute here in Grand Junction. So, hope that would kind of summarized my biography in a way, what I was thinking about.
That's wonderful, Andy. I love that idea of the peace benches as a place where the kids can hear bad news. That's lovely.
Yeah. And Andy, there's something I want to respond to you and something with Bren, both which have been in my experience. And I'm going to I'll address Bren first. It's an anecdote, and some of you on the call may have heard the same thing. I haven't heard it in years, so some of the details may be missing, but the story is a good one. There's a NVC teacher named Mickey Cashton who I had the chance to learn from, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with nonviolent communication, but she told a story when we were assembled as the Peace Alliance about she was at I think it was a family reunion, and her sister also trained in NVC, and she had, I believe, a 3-year-old nephew. And I tell the story every time I teach 90-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 5-year-olds. And they were staying at her sister's home, and the 3-year-old boy got up in the morning and was doing what kids do, and he was banging pots on the floor. And his mother got up and everyone was still sleeping. So he said, his mother said to him, would you be willing to bang the pots on the sofa instead of the floor? And he said, I do not want to, but I am willing to. And his mother said, if you don't want to, why are you willing to? He said, because I want to consider everyone else. And when I give that presentation, I said that he's 3, and they said he was 3. And I said, why can a 3-year-old say that? And people say, because kids are pure, I said, no, he was taught that language. At the age of 3, he was taught, right, that sometimes we have to be willing to do things we don't want to do because we have to consider other people. So, Bren, when you were talking about what kids can do, I always think about that story, right? There are very simple skills that we can teach kids at a very young age. And Andy, what I find for me feels like an antidote to that despair at corruption and lack of participation is, and maybe some of the DOP people could talk about this. When I went to lobby my senators and Congress people, that's really empowering. And to just flip that script that they are answerable to us, right? That they need to be responsive to us. And it doesn't take that much. There's something empowering about advocating, whether at your local government, at your school board, but even to go to DC and to advocate in person is really powerful. And it gives you this sense that we have more power than we think we do. And I don't know if some of the DOP people might want to address that. Barbara?
Nancy's raising her hand. Oh, Barbara's
okay.
speaking on mute. Did you want to say something, Barbara?
Yes, I did. First of all, the story of the prison is just so important. It shows that when you show up, sometimes you don't have to say much, but I'm sure he did. But it's just, if you give somebody an idea, they ponder on it. And I was thinking about when you show up, have some message. I always wear my little peace pin, even grocery shopping, And people always stop me and ask me about what that means. And I said, because my grandfather told me at 3 I was going to be a peacemaker. Now, if my grandfather would not have told me at 3 that I was going to be a peacemaker, I probably wouldn't have married Robert Mueller to working at the United Nations. So when you say something to somebody, and all the time I say these things to people, I say, I can see their souls. They just are so beautiful. And I don't look at what is happening in the moment, but I give them a compliment about what I see in them. And it's something that they can ponder. And so my grandfather was an immigrant from Hungary. And when he told me that, I said, but Grandpa, I'm only 3. And he said, look at all the years you can be a peacemaker. So say the words that you see in that other person, because there's something about the power of our words. And I'll never forget Maya Angelou saying, our voices are the magic, and we have to just use those voices. So that was my trip through peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Nancy, did you want to speak to the Department of Peace Building?
Yeah, I wanted to, well, talking about from Liz's comment about going to Congress. So we've gone to Congress and also held hundreds of Zoom meetings with Congress members over many years. And it is very empowering. We go with the idea of connection, not convincing, and finding the commonality and the humanity in all of us. And that's really powerful. We make a point to ask each person we're meeting with, staff member, about themselves and make the connection on what their interests are. And it's surprising how many people thank us for coming there and being there and actually allowing them to talk about peace and peace building. A lot of them say, we don't get to talk about that. We're just embroiled in so many controversies and differences on Capitol Hill. And one really, I thought, powerful story, one time we were there and some of our Department of Peace Building folks got in an elevator with several military, highly decorated, straight, tall military folks, and everything got very quiet. One of the military people turned to our group and said, well, why are you here? What are you all, lobbying for? And everybody was sort of like quiet and hesitant. And we said, well, we're here for a Department of Peace Building, a cabinet level department to prevent violence. And it got very quiet again. And then one of the generals turned to our group and said, hurry, hurry. So that's the kind of connection we get when we go to Capitol Hill. And I think it gives us all encouragement and hope that we can find some commonality.
Thank you, Nancy. Bren, I saw your hand. Do you still want to?
Oh, okay. Thanks. I was enjoying her comments so much. I've been blessed to be sponsored by a few organizations to go to DC and lobby, and the training that we've gotten, whether it was by America Promise Alliance for increasing the graduation rate with Grad Nation, or PTA or Bread. My most recent one was with bread.org, where we were advocating for the farm bill, to get more funding for SNAP and for the GUSNIP, so that people can afford fruits and vegetables to help fight their sicknesses and just to live healthfully. And but each time I go, I mean, the power that you feel, the connection, the energy, the synergy that you rub off when you meet the different people that's doing the work and you're learning from them. And each time in our training, we always get training before we go. You learn how to better hone in on your talking points, and how when we work together and give everyone a chance to have their say, how much more passion comes across, sincerity, and we really seem to connect to whoever we're meeting with, whether it's the actual legislator or their aides. It's all good. And because you give them enough to be able to take it forth And I believe sometimes that's even better because they get to sell it even more because they really were brought in, and usually they seem glad that you were there. So, and then when you come back, you take that with you to ignite people in your community, and as we meet with our local legislators. So I'm still doing follow-up from the last trip in DC. In fact, I'm going tomorrow on a conference. I just got so excited and started finding other events to do more in Kentucky with the farmers, and trying to help them to, as we advocate to get more resources. And I don't know if you know about the lawsuit with some of the Black farmers didn't get their part with I think USDA.
Yeah.
So I'm just really excited. You just never know where things are gonna lead, and how it continues. And you increase the people out in the field doing the work to help make that change. So I hope to be able to do that with you guys with peace building, and that whole concept of integrating it into our schools and education and our children and our hearts. That's where it needs to be most. So.
Beautiful.
Hey, Bren.
I saw Jim's hand and then Quanta.
I'll be two things, and I'll try and be very short. And well, I remain short. I became aware of something that's very exciting that a lot of Rotarians hopefully will tune into. There's a group, a Rotary Club in California, that is doing a reverse grant. I'll explain, and teaching the trades to prisoners, so that when they come out of prison, they have a job potential. So teaching the trades in prisons. And a reverse grant is there are a lot of clubs around the world that have a lot of money in the grant ability and what we call the DDF that they're not using. And I happen to have contacts on the board of trustees with the foundation, and I can share these clubs, but there's a lot of money available coming in from other countries. A major grant we must work with another country. And a reverse grant is bringing money actually into this country to do a project like that in the prisons. So money is available, and teaching the trades in the prisons gives them a job. It's a great, great program. And Liz, you said one of the things that to me is so important in working in this field for a while and talking to lots of people. I'm well aware that the majority of the society is a long way away from belief system that we have on this screen here, and that peace is possible. The 99.999% of the people do not at their core believe peace is possible. Once we convince people that it is possible, that's really all we have to do. If everybody believed that it would be possible, the guns would be silent overnight. So how do we quietly convince people without being confrontational, teaching there are better ways for security? There is ways of bringing hope very quietly, without them realizing that we're taking away their belief that peace is not possible.
I have an answer. I'd love to hear from Quanta, and then I'll address or Terry if you want to jump in at some point. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Unlike some of the people here who are very lucky to have a peace teaching childhood, I did not have that. I was born and raised in a Greek neighborhood of Istanbul. In 1955, you can check that online. There was Istanbul riots because there was they were circulating, or that in Salonika in Greece, some Greeks went into the mosque, and while people were praying, they attacked them. So this was a rumor that was not really true afterwards that they found out. But I had Greek friends. I was playing with my Greek friends in Istanbul. And at the time I was 8 or 9 years old. And I remember during the riot in my own neighborhood, people came and throwing rocks at the windows of my Greek neighbors. Sorry, but as a child, it really So I had a friend named Sula, and I screamed from the balcony saying, please don't throw stones at my friends. And unfortunately, my family was upset with me because they felt like I was sympathizing with the enemy. Pretty much, that's what they said. I said, and I remember telling my mom, Mom, but we believe that Jesus is a prophet, so why are you guys doing that? I don't want my friend Sula to be hurt. And so I'm wondering, here I was in an environment that was not conducive to learning about peace, and in fact, exactly the opposite. So maybe some of us are by nature maybe created for peace. Because all my life I have been for the underdog, and all my life I tried to defend those that were being treated badly, whether it's a grocery store, whether at work, whether they're a minority. So I do think that we should encourage children very, very much, but not to think that they're coming from a background that is teaching them peace. We all have to take the responsibility of teaching children peace and work with their families as well. That's just something I thought about my childhood, and thanks for letting me share it. And I'm sorry to be emotional about it. Sorry.
No. I didn't see which order. I see Tom and Reverend Carolyn Wilkins and Sharon. I don't know whose hand went up first.
Tom is first.
Tom's
Okay.
hand went up first. It's
Yeah,
You asked the question, what is the place you find poised right now? And I've always been interested in education as a retired international educator of 40 years, and specifically now peace education for youth and for adults. And I'm part of an organizing committee for this course, Indian War 101, Making the Impossible Possible, and Barbara's on the organizing committee as well as Quanta. And we've looked at a quote by Nelson Mandela. It always seems impossible until it's done. And we set a goal for 2030 to end war. It's a 6-hour online course, and it investigates these 4 questions. Is peace possible? Is there such thing as a just war? What really is the cost of war, and what can we do? And we've done a couple of sessions of this course, but now it's open all the time, and you can get to the course by just clicking on that QR code that's on this card. But really, the purpose of the course is to really raise people's consciousness level about this war system that is working against all our good efforts and what we need to do in this world. And it's really a barrier, and we need to get people involved, whether they want to be a practitioner and go out and do projects, or do education, or mediate, or be an activator. There's lots of room. There's lots of pieces of peace that people can do, but if they don't believe that peace is possible, and they don't see a vision for peace, we seem to tolerate this war system.
Thank you. Reverend Carolyn from Agape.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. And I'm not even sure how I got invited to this group, but you're really a lifesaver right now. I've been at Agape for many years. I'm the director of the Global Works Ministry, and have done peace work and human rights work around the world. But the last 4.5 years, I've been in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And it's been a whole new world here, where there's a lot of anger and fighting about immigration and other things. And the shorter version is I've been wondering, I've been asking for direction spiritually of what I'm to do, because my life has been about peace and teaching nonviolence, the teachings of Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Many people I've taught for many years, but I haven't found a space here that is as open to that. So I'm just letting you know that you're a gift. This meeting is a gift. And it's bringing me to a place of where I can refocus in the world. I'm not sure if there's a Rotary Club in this area, but there might be one in El Paso or Albuquerque. But I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here. And you don't know how you're blessing me tonight to just bring up the conversation of peace. And I put my information in the chat. Would love to be in touch with you all.
Thank you so much. And we have Sharon.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you for this wonderful forum this evening. I just thought I would mention that one really powerful story is that there was a president of the United States who gave a very powerful peace speech 60 years ago. And that speech is on video, and both the video and the transcript are available online. And I will put links to those in the chat. A couple of years ago, I kind of stumbled across a group called the JFK Peace Speech Committee and joined that group and got very excited because I'd never heard the speech, which was delivered a couple months, I guess 5 months after I was born. Anyway, so I've been working with this committee to raise awareness about JFK's peace speech, which was his commencement address at American University on June 10th, 1963. So we just passed the anniversary of both that speech and of the assassination of JFK, unfortunately, this year. But our purpose is to raise awareness about that speech and to look at it 60 years later in light of the current national and global situation, and it's terrifyingly relevant today. I'm a singer and songwriter musician, and I wrote a choral piece in which I set much of that speech to music. So if you'd like to hear that, or if you have a chorus that might want to sing it, I'll put that link in the chat as well. And I look forward to being more involved with Rotary. I have a friend who's been involved for quite a long time, but I'm really impressed by the scope of this organization. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm aware of the time. I'm going to, I think, try to, Terry, unless you have final words as well. I want to end with two quick stories, and I highly recommend that JFK speech to American University. I listened to it just again in the last month. It's a powerful speech, and it's good to remind ourselves what was being said. But I want to tell two quick stories. When Barbara talked about just showing up, I created, in response to my students' question, an organization called What Better Looks Like, which I work with. It's built on a Kingian model of creating beloved community. And one of my co-founders survived the genocide in Rwanda. And we, back in 2010, we took a trip to Rwanda and Congo. And we really met with people who had experienced the worst violence it's possible to survive. And when 7 of us went, and on the train home, on the plane home, the other 6 women said, I want to do everything I can to heal those women. But the thought that came to me, honestly, was, I want to do everything I can to heal the men, because the women won't be okay till the men are healed on some level. And completely unrelated, when you talked about showing up, Barbara, for the last 10 years, I've been doing something that's this kind of crazy thing, but that's been super powerful. And I think this is kind of maybe how I'll lead to the closing. I throw a tea party in Bryant Park every Thursday. I left there today, and it was built on the model of Dr. King's beloved community. I put down tablecloths, I bake, I serve tea and sandwiches all day, and everyone is welcome to the table. It's that idea that Dr. King had, right? Everyone has a seat at the table.
There's tea
And-
and china cups, by the way.
Oh, china cups. Yes. I put down my grandmother's china cups, people now. Yeah, tablecloths, china, and everyone. And I don't know if you know, Bryant Park is 1 block from Times Square. I'm sure some of you have a sense of what Times Square is. It's a crossroads of humanity. And for the first 5 years, it was lovely. And then a few years ago, some people started coming who were really drawn because I told them about that idea of beloved community. But in the last year, I've been finding it was super powerful in a different way. I've felt this shift. And I said, I don't know what that is. And my husband said, I do. And unlike me, my husband is not a talker. So when he talks, I really listen. And he said, Liz, you're a magnet. And there are 2 things magnets attract: metal and other magnets. He said the first few years you were attracting metal. People were drawn to it and it was beautiful and they sat there. He said, but a couple of years ago, you started attracting other magnets. And now when the magnets meet and with other magnets, it expands the energy. And in the last month, what I have noticed, and like I said, I rushed from the city today to be here for this call. At the end of the evening, and I start around 10 or 11 in the morning and we go till the park closes. We were there till night. And what I find in the last few months, the people staying at the end are almost all men. A lot of times it's just me and beautiful men, all ages, all backgrounds, and they're just talking. They tell us funny stories, they heal, they connect. They're talking about real life. And I thought, I don't convene a meeting, I don't have an agenda. They just sit and they have found one another. And as I was getting ready to leave, like 7 people rushed in and they were all guys who said, Liz, I know you have to leave early because you have a meeting, but I just wanted to come and say goodbye and grab a brownie. And I think there's something to showing up. And in the last minute, I want to just tell a story when you talked about the children and teaching peace early. I taught middle school social studies. I actually taught peace building, but the state of New York required me to call it social studies. And every year when I talked to young people about how possible peace was, they would say, no, Mrs. Graydon, it's not possible. And every year I showed the movie Gandhi. And one year I was showing the movie Gandhi and Ken Tremaine, I'm still friends with him, slammed his book down. And he said, Mrs. Graydon, this could work. And I said, Ken, it did. And he said, but Mrs. Graydon, and at that point, that was back in the early 2000s. He said, but Mrs. Graydon, there are 6 billion people on the planet. That was the math then. And he said, and you're never going to get 6 billion people to be peaceful. But when you're a teacher, you have all kinds of facts and figures in your head. And if you round off the population of India alone in 1948, when Gandhi helped achieve peaceful revolution, was 300 million. So when you divide 6 billion by 300 million, that's not even hard math. It's 3 into 60. And I said, Ken, you don't need 6 billion Gandhis, you need 20 Gandhis. And we have 31 people in this class. So if 11 of you go home and do nothing but your homework, with these 20 people, we can create that peace. Now that may be statistically nonsense, right? But there's generations of kids who know it's possible because of that. So I know we ran a little over. I just want to thank you guys for this opportunity, for this opening of a conversation. I hope I see everyone putting stuff, their information. Yeah, you can find me. It's just my name, Liz Gannon Graydon @gmail.com. And I would really love to make any kind of collaborations people think make sense.
Thank you so much, Jim, for having us as your guest tonight.
Oh my, this has been fantastic. You can tell the stories all night long, and it's just the sharing of the ideas. This is how we grow. This is tremendous. I can't thank you enough. And we will be in touch. I have a feeling that this is going to go somewhere else. But anyway, next month, we are thrilled to bring Marie Berry, who is the director of the C. Shu Kang Center for the International Security and Diplomacy at the Joseph Corbell School of International Studies at the University of Denver. Takes 3 breaths just to say where she's from. But Marie is a feminist sociologist and writer focused on mass violence, gender, politics, and social movements. She will be speaking on a new book she will soon publish on finding beauty in the dark, love, creativity, and resilience during genocide and mass atrocities. It certainly sounds intriguing to me. Again, I can't thank you enough. Terry, Liz, you're superstars in my book.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much.
I wish you all the happy holidays, whether it's Kwanzaa, whether it's Hanukkah, whether it's Christmas, whether it's just sitting on your knees in front of whatever. I wish you the best of life. And not only do I wish you the best holidays, for the same price, I wish you the best life possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good night, everybody, or good morning, or wherever you are.
Yes. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.